She looks at you and you feel it. A spark, a promise, a chance to be someone extraordinary. But what if that gaze isn't seeing you at all? What if it's a trap, a projection of a fantasy you were never meant to fulfill? Carl Jung, the psychologist who plumbed the depths of the human soul, warned men of a hidden danger. Women don't love you for who you are, they love the myth they've cast you in. This video isn't a comfort zone or a dating guide. It's a surgical strike into the psychological games that keep you enslaved. Drawing on Jung's insights, we'll unravel the invisible strings of projection, the feminine animus, and the brutal path to becoming a man who can't be manipulated. By the end, you'll never see love or yourself the same way again. Carl Jung spent his life mapping the unconscious, the shadowy realm where our deepest truths hide. His discovery about women is as unsettling as it is profound. They don't fall in love with men. They fall in love with an idea. Jung called this the animus, the inner masculine image every woman carries, a fantasy shaped by her unconscious desires. When she looks at you, she's not seeing you. She's seeing a role she's cast you to play: hero, savior, rebel, provider. You think you're chosen, but you're hired, a temporary actor in a script you didn't write. This projection isn't conscious. Most women don't realize they're doing it. The animus, when immature, acts like a tyrant, driving her to chase men who fit her fantasy while rejecting those who don't. She might crave danger one day, stability the next, but it's never about you. It's about her inner story. You feel special, different, until the mask slips. When you fail to match her vision, she doesn't rewrite the script. She replaces you, leaving you blindsided, wondering what went wrong. Men fall for this because no one taught you to see it. You mistake her desire for understanding, her choice for connection. You believe her when she says you're the one, blind to the fact that the one is a character she invented. Jung warned that this is a form of spiritual possession. Her animus takes over and she becomes a vessel for a fantasy she doesn't control. You're not her partner, you're her projection, a canvas for her unconscious to paint. The tragedy is how willingly you play along. Society trains you to seek female approval, to measure your worth by her gaze. You bend, adapt, perform, thinking it's love. But Jung had a harsher term: self-betrayal. Every time you mold yourself to fit her fantasy, you lose a piece of who you are. You're not building a relationship. You're auditioning for a role that was never yours. And when the curtain falls, you're left empty, humiliated, with no one to blame but the mirror you refuse to face. The only way out, Jung said, is individuation, the grueling process of becoming whole within yourself. It's not about blaming women, it's about seeing the game for what it is. A man who doesn't know himself is a puppet, dancing to someone else's tune. Until you confront your own unconscious, you'll keep falling for the same illusion, chasing a love that was never real. Jung's concept of the animus is a psychological landmine. It's not just a fantasy. It's a force that can dominate a woman's mind, turning her into a stranger to herself. When the animus is undeveloped, it's a tyrant, whispering false certainties, demanding impossible standards, and projecting chaos onto the men in her life. She argues without reason, moralizes without accountability, dominates without wisdom, not because she's cruel, but because she's possessed by a part of herself she hasn't faced. You see it in her eyes, that flicker of expectation, the unspoken demand that you become something more, something else. She's not loving you, she's loving a myth. The animus convinces her you're the key to her wholeness, but it's a lie. No man can complete her inner world, just as no woman can complete yours. Yet you try, don't you? You twist yourself into knots, chasing her approval, thinking if you get it right, she'll finally see you. But she can't. She's not seeing reality. She's seeing a projection. This isn't her fault alone. Men are complicit, trained to crave validation, to believe a woman's desire is proof of their worth. You mistake her intensity for connection, her demands for destiny. Jung warned that men who don't understand the animus become its slaves, bending to every whim, sacrificing their identity to keep the fantasy alive. You call it compromise. Jung called it surrender. You're not building a partnership. You're fueling an illusion. The animus doesn't just harm you, it traps her too. A woman under its spell is disconnected from her true self, projecting her unresolved conflicts onto you. She blames you for her doubts, punishes you for her fears, resents you for not being the god she imagined. And you, desperate to be her hero, keep trying to fix what was never your problem. Jung's insight is brutal. Until she confronts her animus, she's not capable of loving you as a man, only as a character. Breaking free starts with seeing the trap. You can't change her projection, but you can refuse to play the role. Individuation, Jung's antidote, demands you face your own unconscious. Your fears, your need for approval, your buried weaknesses. It's a lonely path, but it's the only one that leads to freedom. A man who knows himself doesn't need her to define him. He stands firm, not as her fantasy, but as his own reality. The greatest tragedy of modern men, Jung observed, isn't rejection, it's self-betrayal. You've been taught to mold yourself into whatever shape you think will win her love. You call it effort, partnership, love. Jung called it something else. A refusal to face your own soul. Every time you adjust, compromise, or hide your truth to please her, you put on a mask. And the longer you wear it, the harder it is to remember who you were before. Society sets you up for this. From boyhood, you're told your worth lies in her approval. Be strong, be kind, be successful, but above all, be what she wants. You learn to perform, to smile when you're breaking, to agree when you disagree, to soften your edges to fit her script. You think you're being a good man, but you're becoming a ghost, a shadow of someone else's fantasy. Women sense this even if they don't say it. The animus craves mystery, strength, a man who defies definition. But when you make yourself predictable, always available, always agreeable, you become invisible. Jung noted that the feminine instinct isn't drawn to comfort. It's drawn to the unknown, the man who stands firm in his own truth. The more you try to please, the less she respects you, because you've stopped being a man and started being a role. The mask doesn't just cost you her attraction, it costs you yourself. You forget what you want, what you believe, what makes you alive. You trade your authenticity for temporary approval, only to find it's never enough. She doesn't love the mask. She loves the fantasy it represents. And when you can't sustain it, she moves on, leaving you to pick up the pieces of an identity you abandoned. Jung's solution is individuation, the courage to strip away the mask and face the man beneath. It's not easy. It means confronting your insecurities, your need for validation, the parts of yourself you've buried to be lovable. It means standing alone, risking rejection, choosing truth over comfort. But only by doing this do you become a man who can't be manipulated, a man who doesn't need her applause to know his worth. Individuation, Jung taught, is not a path for the faint-hearted. It's a descent into the abyss of your own soul, a confrontation with everything you've avoided, your fears, your flaws, your emptiness. It's lonely, terrifyingly so, because it forces you to let go of the crutches you've leaned on, her approval, society's validation, the comfort of fitting in. But this loneliness is the price of freedom. As you walk this path, you'll see things you can't unsee. You'll notice the projections, the games, the masks people wear to avoid their own truths. You'll see women casting you as heroes or villains, not because of who you are, but because of what they need you to be. You'll try to explain it, to share what you've learned, but most won't listen. They'll call you cold, arrogant, too serious. They'll say you've changed, and they won't mean it kindly. Jung knew this well. He saw patients recoil from their own shadows, the dark parts of their psyche they refused to face. Women, he noted, are often shielded from this work, taught they're complete as they are, emotional, intuitive, pure. But an unintegrated animus makes them prisoners, projecting false authority and moral superiority onto men who dare to challenge their illusions. You think you're her savior, but you're her scapegoat, blamed for the war she won't fight within. This truth makes you a mirror, and mirrors are rarely loved. People cling to their fantasies, their projections, because reality is too raw. A man who individuates becomes untouchable, not cold, but clear. He sees through the scripts, the roles, the unspoken demands. He doesn't hate women, he understands them, perhaps better than they understand themselves. But that understanding comes at a cost. You no longer fit in a world built on illusion. Yet this is where your power begins. In the solitude of individuation, you forge a strength that can't be shaken. You stop needing her to complete you, because you found your own wholeness. You stop chasing love because you've learned to love your own truth. Jung's promise is stark. The man who walks this path doesn't just survive, he becomes a force, a presence that commands respect without demanding it. Jung's insights cut both ways. While women project their animus onto you, you're not innocent either. Men carry their own unconscious force, the anima, the inner feminine that shapes how you see women. When you chase her validation, you're not just falling for her projection, you're projecting your own, casting her as the savior, the mother, the goddess who'll make you whole. This dance of illusions traps you both. A woman possessed by her animus is a force of chaos. Jung described it as a false certainty, a voice that speaks with authority she hasn't earned. She moralizes, manipulates, demands, not because she's evil, but because she's blind to her own shadow. She projects her unresolved masculine energy onto you, blaming you for her doubts, punishing you for her fears. And you, desperate to be her hero, take the blame, thinking it's your job to fix her. This cycle is inevitable when neither of you has done the work. Jung called relationships between unindividuated people a form of possession, not love. You're not connecting. You're transacting, trading projections like currency. She needs you to be her fantasy. You need her to be yours. When the illusions crack, you don't break up. You wake up stunned by the realization that you were never truly seen. The tragedy is that society enables this. Women are rarely challenged to face their animus, rewarded instead for emotionality and intuition. Men are taught to seek their approval, to see their desire as proof of manhood. But Jung's warning is clear. A man who doesn't integrate his anima is as lost as a woman who ignores her animus. You're not her victim, you're her partner in a mutual delusion. Breaking free means doing what she may not, facing your shadow. Individuation isn't just about rejecting her projection, it's about dismantling your own. You stop seeing her as your salvation and start seeing her as a human, flawed and struggling like you. This clarity doesn't make you bitter, it makes you free. You no longer need her to define you, because you've defined yourself. Jung's ultimate challenge to men is this: stop waiting to be chosen. Your worth isn't in her eyes, her words, or her love. It's in the man you choose to become. Individuation is the path to that choice. A lifelong journey of stripping away the masks, confronting the shadows, and building a soul that stands firm without applause. The man who walks this path isn't just free, he's sovereign. This sovereignty scares people. A man who doesn't need validation is a threat to a world built on performance. Women, especially those still gripped by their animus, will call you distant, unfeeling, too much. They'll resent you, not because you've hurt them, but because you've stopped playing their game. You've stepped off the stage and they don't know what to do with a man who writes his own script. Yet this is where true connection begins. When you're whole, you no longer attract women who need a character. You attract those who've done their own work. Jung believed that only individuated people can love without possession, because they don't need each other to fill their voids. These women don't demand you perform. They stand beside you, raw and real, not as saviors or prizes, but as equals on their own paths. This love is rare, because individuation is rare. Most men settle for the fantasy, the performance, the temporary thrill of being needed. They fear the loneliness, the responsibility, the terror of facing themselves. But Jung's truth is unrelenting. Until you die to your false selves, you'll never live as your true one. The man who chooses himself, who burns through his illusions, becomes something more than a lover. He becomes a mirror, reflecting truth to a world that fears it. You'll walk alone for a while, maybe forever. People will misunderstand you, mock you, fear you. But in that solitude, you'll find a power no one can take. You'll love, not out of need, but out of choice. You'll stand, not for her, but for you. And when you do, you'll see her not as a goddess or a villain, but as a human, walking her own path, struggling with her own shadows. You won't need to save her, and she won't need to save you. Together you'll simply be two souls, free at last, in a world still dreaming.